Hello everyone and welcome to today's virtual science lesson. We're going to be looking at coronary heart disease today, and if you haven't already then I recommend going back and watching the lesson on the heart. So the first activity for you to do is to complete the table and use the key words to help you. So number 1, for example, may be the valves or the right ventricle, and so on and so forth. Let's go through the answers. So the first answer that brings oxygenated blood from the lungs is the pulmonary vein. And the pulmonary vein is this one just on the right. Now the route that the blood takes in the body, which might help a little bit with remembering this, is through the vena cava, the right atrium, the right ventricle, then it goes up to the lungs where it gets oxygenated, and then to the pulmonary vein, and it continues on the journey. The chamber with the thickest muscle is the left ventricle over here, and that's because that oxygenated blood here has to get pumped all the way out to the rest of the body through the aorta. The chamber that receives blood from the veins are the atriums, as we've just seen. And the things that prevent backflow of blood when the heart relaxes is the valves, and you can see an example of the valves here or here. The one that takes oxygenated blood to the body is the aorta, which is obviously up here, as we've just seen. It has to help get the blood out to where it's needed. And the part that brings deoxygenated blood from the body is the vena cava, which is up here. And that's that deoxygenated blood that needs to travel through the heart, get pumped to the lungs to be oxygenated before it's then pumped to the rest of the body. So coronary heart disease is a disease caused by a buildup of fatty substances blocking the coronary arteries, which supply the heart with oxygen. So all of your blood vessels are important, of course, but the coronary arteries in particular, because they're supplying the blood flow to your heart, which is the organ that you need to do the rest of it. So it's really, really important set of arteries. Quick recap then. Can you remember the order in which blood flows through the parts of the heart from the vena cava to the rest of the body? We've literally just done it. So pause the video and jot it down in your book. So hopefully, as we've just gone through it, you remember that it's the vena cava, the atrium, through the valve into the right ventricle, then it gets pumped to the lungs, it enters back into the heart through the pulmonary vein where it travels through the atrium, another valve, the ventricle, the aorta, and then out to the rest of the body. So what I'd like you to do is to write coronary heart disease or CHD in the middle of your paper, and we're going to mind map all our ideas throughout this video. So add to it as we talk about new things, and pause the video even if there's not a pause symbol there so you can get all the information down. So what happens if something goes wrong with your heart? Heart disease kills more people in the UK than any other disease, and almost half of heart disease deaths are from coronary heart disease. And coronary heart disease affects the coronary arteries, which supply the heart muscle with the glucose and oxygen that it requires for respiration. Remember that respiration has given it the energy that it then needs to carry out its job of continuously contracting to be able to pump blood to the rest of your body. If the coronary artery is blocked, the blood supply to the part of the heart muscle is cut off, and that part of the heart cannot continue to contract, causing a heart attack. And you can see here on this animation, the artery gets a thick layer of plaque in it, it gets blocked, and then the actual heart tissue, without getting the supply of oxygen, stops working. And on this, it's been shown as going black because you do get permanent damage to your heart. Your heart will become scarred from it. So a common cause of coronary heart disease is a buildup of fatty deposits in the lining of the blood vessels. So remember, these arteries are supplying blood to the heart muscle, and they can become blocked by a buildup of fatty plaques containing cholesterol, which results in CHD. Cholesterol is a waxy substance found in your blood, and your body needs cholesterol to build healthy cells. But high levels of cholesterol can increase your risk of heart disease. With high cholesterol, you can develop fatty deposits in your blood vessels, and you can get these from things like a poor diet. Eating more saturated fat tends to increase cholesterol levels, and things like stress and smoking can also increase your blood pressure and cause this to happen. It restricts the flow of blood. And if we think back to when I was talking about blood vessels and how the arteries are under really high pressure, as if you put your thumb over the end of a hose, with this, there's a blockage in that hose pipe. So imagine if somebody stood on the hose, nothing's going to come out. And if that hose was attached to your heart, it's going to cause permanent damage to your heart and a heart attack and potentially death. So as we've just said, plaque is made up of cholesterol and fat and calcium and other substances found in the blood. And that's okay in short amounts having cholesterol, but not when it starts to make plaque. Over time, plaque hardens and it narrows your arteries, and it limits the flow of oxygen-rich blood to your organs. It restricts that flow of blood. That reduction in the supply of oxygen to the heart will cause pain, heart attack, and even death. As the blood flow is restricted, blood pressure increases. And this causes damage to the lining of your artery. Platelets start to aggregate and lay down a blood clot. So as you can imagine, you've now got this lump of platelets in your blood vessel, and that's not going to be a good thing. We call it a thrombus. Sometimes a thrombus, that lump of platelets that have formed in your artery, can become dislodged and move around the body. So now visualize you've got this lump of platelets traveling around your body. This thrombus can settle anywhere, and it can block other arteries and veins. It's particularly problematic if the thrombus moves to the lungs. An aneurysm is the enlargement of an artery caused by the weakness in the artery wall. These weakened points swell to form a balloon-like blood-filled structure called an aneurysm. Aneurysms burst, leading to hemorrhage, which is a massive blood loss. This then leads to a loss of blood in that region of the body, and a brain aneurysm is known as a stroke. You can get other problems with your heart. Leaky valves are an example. Over time, your heart valves can leak or not close properly, and this leads to breathlessness and eventually death. Just have a little think about why that might happen. Another problem is with the rhythm of your heart. If the natural pacemaker of your heart stops working, it can cause serious problems. It can cause the person's heart to beat abnormally slow or fast or irregular. If it's too slow, it means that you're not going to get enough oxygen, and too fast means that your heart cannot pump that blood properly. Now, you can get an artificial pacemaker, and that's a small battery-operated electronic device which is put in the person's chest, and it sends out regular adjustable electrical impulses to produce contractions of the heart. So if your heart's doing this, we can put a little electrical signal here which will make it do this, which is what we want it to do. And there's several types of artificial pacemaker which have electrical leads connected to the different chambers of the heart. The wires are guided along a vein to the chamber of the heart that needs to be stimulated, and the lead extends to the pacemaker, which is fitted beneath the skin of the upper chest and the chest muscle. It's a really common type of heart surgery performed in the UK. So if your left atrium wasn't working properly, we could put a wire through your vein to attach this wire to the left atrium, put the battery pack under your chest, and it could cause that electrical signal to make the muscle contract, which, although scary, is amazing to think that we can do that. So what can we do to fix the heart apart from artificial pacemakers? Stents, statins, replacement valves, artificial hearts, pacemakers, or a heart transplant. I'm going to talk about stents in a second. Statins are a class of drug often prescribed by doctors to help lower cholesterol levels in the blood. If we lower the levels of cholesterol in the blood, then we can help prevent heart attacks and strokes. There's no surgery involved, so that's brilliant, but obviously with all medicines there can be side effects. Replacement valves I'm going to talk about in a second, and we've already spoke about pacemakers. Now, heart transplants is obviously the last step. That's a really major surgery. You don't need to know a huge amount about it for any exams, but you can do further research on it if you are interested. So I want you to just pause here and make sure that you add these things to your mind map that we started at the start of the video. This is a stent, and a stent's a tiny tube that your doctor can insert into a blocked passageway to keep it open. The stent restores the flow of blood, and stents are made of either metal or plastic. So if you can see on the diagram on the left, we've got an artery that's filled with the cholesterol. It's got a really narrow, restricted flow of blood. So by putting the balloon in it, you're causing it to inflate, which is then making that area bigger, and blood flow will return to normal. In most people, heart valves work faultlessly throughout our lives, but in a few people, the heart valves can become faulty. There's two faults that are the main ones. The heart valve may become stiff, preventing the valve opening fully, or it might develop a leak. Faulty valves can be replaced with biological valves, which are from humans or mammals, or using a mechanical valve. Biological valves are created from animal valves or other animal tissue that's strong and flexible, and usually from pigs, and pigs' hearts are relatively similar in size to human hearts. They can last 10 to 20 years, and the risk of blood clotting is very small because it's a biological tissue, so patients don't usually require the long-term use of medication. So as a plus, don't usually need medication. They're obviously a more natural thing to use, but they only last 10 to 20 years. So if you needed this at the age of 40, you're going to need this surgery to be done maybe more than once, which isn't a good thing. Mechanical heart valves, on the other hand, are made of lightweight, strong and durable materials such as titanium. They'll last between 20 to 30 years before a replacement is needed, so that's brilliant because you may only need it once in your lifetime. Because of the materials in the valve, however, it's likely that blood clots will form on it, which will stop it from working. So you tend to have to take medication, such as blood thinning drugs, every day for the rest of your life. Mechanical valves are cheaper than biological ones, but this does not take into account the long-term use of drugs. So what I'd like you to do here is to pause the video, copy and complete the table. There may be some things where you're going to have to go away and research, such as artificial hearts potentially, and then I'm going to go through the answers. So pause the video and get the table down. Starting with a stent, we use it for blocked arteries. It's a tiny balloon which is used to open up the blocked artery. And the advantages is that it can be used to deliver drugs to prevent clotting. You don't need a general anaesthetic. But the disadvantage is that there is a cost involved, obviously. Statins lower the risk of coronary heart disease, and they do that because they reduce the cholesterol that's in our blood. You don't need surgery, but of course there can be side effects from taking drugs. With bypass surgery, that is used for a blocked artery, and we replace the damaged vessel with a bit of vein from somewhere else. It can be used when a stent can't help, but it's expensive and you do have to go into general anaesthetic, which is another risk that you have to take. Biological valves are used for leaking valves, and they replace our damaged valves with an animal valve. So they work well and they're quite cheap, but they only last 10 to 20 years. Mechanical valves, also used for leaking valves. They replace a damaged valve with a valve made from titanium and other polymers. They last for a lifetime, hopefully, because 20 to 30 years is a pretty long time. But the person has to take medication to prevent clotting, which means it can be expensive. An artificial pacemaker is used to regulate the natural rhythm of the heart, and it's an electric device that attaches wires to the heart to stimulate the heartbeat. It restores quality and length of life, but it does require regular checkups. An artificial heart is for when the heart's completely failed. It's a temporary heart which can pump blood for you, and it allows the damaged heart to rest and helps to extend life until hopefully a transplant would be available. The disadvantages is it can cause blood clotting, it's not really that available, and it does mean a really long hospital stay, and of course it's extremely expensive. Finally, a 76-year-old man needs a replacement heart valve. He lives alone and cares for himself. Choose the most suitable type of heart valve replacement for him and explain how you made this decision. Thank you for watching.